Hey, you've probably heard an awful lot about vibe coding and maybe even done some of yourself. But here's the question. Who's securing that code? Stick around. I've got a great answer for that question. Hello and welcome to another episode of CISO Tradecraft, the podcast that provides you with the information, knowledge, and wisdom to be a more effective cybersecurity leader. My name is Jim Arcardi. I'm your co-host for today, and today we're going to be talking about an important threat surface that is right now kind of exposed to bad actors, and they are taking notice. And that is the developer workstation, or more precisely, how are we putting together code? So we've got a guest for our show, Shahar Man, and you are here from Backslash Security. So welcome and glad to have you on the show.
Absolutely, Mark. Thank you so much for having me today.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. I mean, you're an entrepreneur, you're running this business, you're doing some pretty amazing cutting edge stuff, but how did you get to where you are now? I always am interested in the people with whom I speak.
Yeah, that's a very interesting journey that I've been through. I started with engineering, enterprise software, more than a decade with SAP. Some of it was with the team in Germany, in Tel Aviv, and Palo Alto. And with my time in engineering, I got very curious about the cyberspace, and I joined a very small startup, still a single digit number of employees, called Aqua Security back then in 2016. And I led the engineering team on a hyper growth stage of the company from zero to around 150 people in engineering in a very interesting domain, which was the containers and Docker hyped back in 2016. But then I got the energy to move into what's happening in AI and build my own company with my friend Yossi, who just sold his company. And we got this entrepreneurship virus that we couldn't let go. Not too young. It's probably not our first rodeo closing. We're not the 25, 30-ish young entrepreneur getting out of college. But we're definitely the more mature, experienced founders. And this is what got us into Backslash Security.
Well, wonderful. So in Backslash, you're looking at things like vibe coding and the like. Well, tell me a little bit about your mission. What is it that is your core focus of what you're working on right now? What business problem are you offering to solve for your customers?
Absolutely. So, vibe coding is a very interesting term. Let's start there. So, it means different things for different people. I think it was coined early 2025 um, when the action of interacting with coding activities became more of prompting. We all know ChatGPT and other AI environments where you just chat with them and it feels like you're talking to a brain and things starting to happen. Think about the same activity for creating code. So no longer being very strict about the syntax and every little tiny things that needs to compile and needs to debug. We've been there in the last 3 decades. It's more about saying what you need, being very clear and articulate what you need from the prompt, and you get it like a magic into your development environment to a point you're almost not you're not care you don't care anymore about the code. So you just care about what you ask and what you get in return. Now, the reason I say it's vibe coding, it's an interesting term, is because they're the puristic view of vibe coding with tools like Lovable, Base 44, etc., where you just prompt and get a full blown app ready for you, versus where Backslash is focused, which is the enterprise appearance of Claude Code, Cursor, Microsoft GitHub Copilot, etc., etc. So the wildfire right now in organization that are being used, changing their development practices into this prompt activities of creating code. Does that make sense, Mark?
It does. So, to kind of recap there, you've got the traditional approach of, hey, use a generative pre-trained transformer to have a conversation. That's great when you're asking questions and you're getting ideas. But then people realize that, hey, I could get some code out of this. And as you had said, something like either Lovable Base 44, they'll build the app for you, or you just go to a Claude Code, Cursor, Copilot, and it writes it for you. But focusing on the enterprise, which is a very different question than just at home saying, I'm going to make myself a little agent. Uh, the enterprise question is, I think, a lot more durable and important because as we look at what happens when organizations put out code, we're almost seeing a tectonic shift in the workplace for coders. We tell our kids, go get a university degree, study computer science. There's a great future for you. And we found out in 2025 that there's not that great future waiting because a lot of organizations are saying, we could probably do this entry level stuff with AI, so we're just not going to hire you. So it's a bit of a tangent, but what are your observations in terms of this ability for AI to develop code and it's competing, if you will, against the humans that have gone through a university degree program and trying to get hired? Are you seeing that conflict? Is this going to persist, or are we going to retrain our computer science people to become experts not in coding, but in running the tools that are writing the code?
Wow, that's that's a
Yeah,
big
if we could talk about that for half an hour, but I
yeah,
gave you a bunch of
that's a big
ideas.
one, but that's a very interesting one. From my experience, I just happen to be in the last, I don't know, 6, 7 years a judge in the college graduates of my own college where I graduated computer science like 20 years ago, just dating myself, maybe more. And it's amazing to see the change, the dramatic change in the last couple of years, especially last year, where all the projects, like 90% of the projects, were created with vibe coding environments to a point you're not really sure whether the students of computer science were actually knowing what code was generated to create the app they were asking for. And then you ask yourself, does it really matter? As it actually generates the functionality they wanted. And then talking to the leadership of that college, they're saying there's a very dramatic drop for next year with registrations to computer science degrees. So it's happening, it's right here and it's real. But I think academy should reinvent itself around what's happening in the industry and see how they can leverage this new and amazing tool set to the new frontier of what can be done with AI and not just doing the same things just a little bit faster or better. But it's a very new frontier of what AI can generate for us. I think that will be the challenge for academy, which is very different than the enterprises.
It's an interesting insight. I think as we look at it, we talk about what is the future going to be if we become detached, if you will, from the code. I mean, early on, my first computers, we built them, we had to program them in machine code, then we got to assembly language and then higher level languages. And finally, you worked your way up the food chain. So you became more and more abstracted from what was actually happening at the machine level, but that was okay. We described what we wanted in programming language, whether it happened to be a Python today where we use interpretive language or something back in the day when they had COBOL where they would compile it. It was still kind of human. Now we've abstracted one more layer. Are we getting so far away from what's happening that we're going to lose track of what's really going on with our computers? And I'm going to refer folks not to say we're going to go read it right now, but go look up a 1958 short story by Isaac Asimov called The Feeling of Power. You can find it on the internet. It's floating around. But basically, it's a futuristic story about what happens when mankind no longer knows what's going on at all inside the computers. Are we going to get to that point? And if so, what's to help us to be able to manage this business function going forward when nobody sitting around the table really understands what's going on, but somehow stuff happens?
That's a very fascinating discussion. Think about this fact. The most growing development language right now is the English language, right? Because once prompting become a practice of people just describing in English their own and sometimes their own native languages what they need, and that translate from that abstraction to the actual code of the high level, the Python, the Java, etc. Um, so that's exactly what you just mentioned. Think about it this way: when C came in, when I was writing assembly code for mainframes, and when C came in, it was like a magic. You can write, we thought it was English, right? It looks like you're saying stuff in English, and behind the scenes, this weird um, code of the machine is generated for you by this magic. But think about how far have we got that you can even write your English with tons of typos. As long as the idea is clear and it's coherent, you will get the exact results that you wanted in 90% or in very high percentage of the time. So I think this is where we are right now. Think about the term shift left. When
Mhm.
we discussed production and we a little bit shift the left, especially with my previous company, Aqua, where we tried to do everything in the CI and secure stuff way earlier. Now the left become way more left. It as left as a person thinking about something. When you think about something, you can describe it in English. This is where the protection should start on the prompt level, on the coding agent level, and even before a single line of code was actually generated. So, definitely fascinating times and a tectonic shift with how do you think about security for this domains.
Well, that's an interesting thought because the person who is going to be doing the, for lack of a better term, dictating, here is my concept. I'm going to describe what I want. In general, the average user does not and may never be thinking about security. They're not going to say, put this guardrail on, filter the input, make sure that you don't have this. Da, da, da. How do we impose that onto our AI coding tools such that even a well described input can result in a secure output, even if the description has nothing to do about doing it securely?
To be honest, that's the main problem the industry is struggling right now with. And we've been there with the previous infrastructural revolution, like VM versus actual machines, cloud versus physical premises of servers, etc. And typically, the security aspect of each domain lags behind the the infrastructure change and the technology shift. Now we're talking about a pace that we've never seen before. So you talk about vibe coding agents, you want to try and secure them and make sure they're okay. Before we even understand how to do that, there are MCPs that can be attached to them. And before we can secure the MCPs, there are skills that can be attached to the vibe coding. And now all of a sudden, when I hear the word skills, it reminds me the Matrix, where Neo, I think it was Neo or maybe
Yeah, you download something. Now I can fly a
exactly.
helicopter.
They need to fly a helicopter right now. So it's an on-demand skill. You can just pull it and use it as an agent to do stuff you didn't know you can actually do. So this is the pace, and everything is moving in. It started with years, now to quarters, now to months, and now in 1 week announcement of Claude, you can find an infrastructure change that impacts the security community so fast and so deep that it's almost overwhelming. On the other hand, I think it's an opportunity to use AI to make sure everything is secured in the environments, that at least the CISOs has visibilities on what's going on, and that's the most important concerns. They have the right guardrails on these agents and how they perform, etc., etc. And with the usage of AI, we can actually protect them better than we can do with only, the traditional guardrails.
And let's look back a little bit because we had talked earlier about people and jobs and things like that. Now, last year, Amazon had a couple issues. Back in December, there was a 13-hour interruption to the Amazon Web Service, and ultimately they said it was their AI agent Kiro who was autonomously chose to delete and then recreate part of the environment. And then in October, a whole bunch of websites went down for hours, and yet Amazon in January cut 16,000 jobs. That was a plan, and they laid off 14,000 more in October. And they're talking about that these cuts are about company culture, not about replacing workers with AI. And then, well, maybe the thing that went down wasn't really AI's fault. It was human error and things like that. And now we feel like we're getting all of this double speak coming out of the corporate world, where I understand that you have a fiduciary obligation to your shareholders to produce a return on value. And If you have people that aren't adding value, then they don't really need to be part of your staff. But are we ready for prime time? Are we ready to go ahead and turn over the coding to the um, code engines without a human in the loop? I still think these is a little bit like giving the car keys to a 9-year-old instead of a 16-year-old, which is still an issue, but at 9, they can probably keep it on the road, but you get something scary comes up and they have not know what to do, they're gonna panic. Where are we in terms of our maturity level of our code developing software? Are we like a 9-year-old behind the wheel, a 16-year-old, or like an old guy like us?
Wow, that's a good question. It's hard to say, but I will say that this kid is aging way faster than anything else we've seen. So it might
Mhm.
be a 4 years old, but it can be a 20 years old a week later. And as an industry, we should expect this kind of paces and, holding back as the human nature, the human psychology to say, oh, this is not real, this is not happening. Um, Reject the trend is always the automatic reaction we have to such technology trend. But at the end of the day, this is happening. We're absolutely convinced this here to stay. Whether it will impact jobs and how it will impact them, that's a very interesting question. I think there. I heard the two sides of this the story. On one hand, actually, history shows us that when a resource become that cheap, the consumption of this resource become way bigger and greater, and maybe coding will be an activity my mom could do, to write something or to ask for something from a machine that can make her life easier, and not only the traditional coder that we had in mind. I think what
Mhm.
C did to assembly, it's not that they replaced the assembly developers with a easier C wrap. It was more about introducing coding to way bigger community of people who can relate to English that looks like C, right? You define integers, and you define some loops, and it looks like English rather than the machine code. So think about this change. Just take it, multiply it, I don't know, 100 times more abstract, and here we are with that. So I absolutely sure that long term, the automation that is running our system, running the clouds, running everything will be more and more AI based. Also, the autonomy system that are fixing the problem. Still, in the near term, when bad things happen, you can only wake up the guy responsible for that. You would not wake up an AI agent at 2 a.m. telling him, "Hey, can you fix that problem?" You will wake the responsible human being that can solve the problem and handle the things. I think this will change in the next couple of years.
Good insight. Now we're going from initially AI kind of with the GPT world where ask it a question, you get an answer. And now we're moving, I think, to kind of AI as an assistant, help me do stuff. We're now getting into agentic AI. AI is an agent. And what's happening then is I'm using some of these developer tools, Cursor, Windsurf. Am I losing control of my source code integrity? I mean, we think code's going to get better and better because you're not going to have those random typos. So there's none that debug cycle that goes in there. But are we risking having development done without the wisdom that these humans has developed over the years?
Short answer, yes, we are. It is a risk, but it comes with this great technology that we have now. A single person capable using the power of several agents that he runs on his machine can have an efficiency of an engineering team, a small engineering team. So cost effectively, this is absolutely amazing point in time, an inflection point with how software is being developed. And of course, considering the pace, something gotta give. Something needs to be, we cannot still look at the CI and see what's going into production and sleep well at night because we have this gate. Because this gate is going to be bombarded 100x more time with things that are generated by AI. So we can no longer count on this single gate we have in the CI and make sure the code in production will be clean up, send back to developers, have the traditional routine of CI back to developers, back to the CI on a code that you can generate thousands lines of code in seconds. So the practices we put together in the past are no longer valid. I think we should be more careful about what the agents are, who they represent, their identity, their connection to the outside world, rather than the code that will get better gradually because AI will be controlling also the output.
So we're improving, and part of me says, hey, that's a welcome change. But then also we take a look at our AppSec teams and we say, okay, fine. As we have this software development cycle that is involving fewer and fewer human programmers, do we provide for the application security team? We said, well, let AI go ahead and manage the AI code. Are we letting the fox guard the hen house in a way? Or is this actually represent a way that we can have an independent review? This one writes the code, this one evaluates the code from a security perspective. And at that point in time, going back to the two-person control, we have a two AI control. Is that concept even valid?
Yeah, it sounds like science fiction, but that's definitely a situation we can run in reality very fast. What I see, as long as I can predict, for my very specific position, is that the AppSec team, the AppSec department will be changed dramatically considering what we're seeing today. I think that what we've seen on February 20th regarding the announcement from Claude about Claude Code security, it was very predictable. We saw that like a year before when we started to see the process and this flywheel starting to happen. That code is coming out. It started as a first grade, second grade, and we knew it's going to grow so fast to a point that the value of looking at the code going out of the AI agents and making it a little bit better by using practices like SAST, SEA, stuff like that we used to do in the last decades, the value will drop dramatically. And I think the market reacted accordingly to this announcement. They understand that if the AI agent, Claude as a representative for the group, will take a stab into the security of the code, they will have a better chance to end up as the winners rather than the traditional AppSec companies. And the job of an AppSec engineer will change completely. And now we're talking with AppSec teams more and more about the new beasts in this new zoo, about MCPs, about skills, about AI rules, about them being malicious. And that's actually a very good opportunity to be an AppSec engineer today because you extend your skill set to a very interesting frontier.
Hmm. And so going forward, then, as we look at the change of role, if you will, the complexity of being an AppSec engineer, you said it's not something to be afraid of. It's not AI is not going to take your job, but rather AI is going to transform your responsibilities into something that is going to be perhaps more fast paced, but definitely absolutely essential to an organization going forward, correct?
Absolutely. I think that it's an exciting time to have the to be in the application security team. Instead of just doing this on an ongoing work on looking at vulnerabilities, sending them back to engineering, making sure the right priorities are being addressed. Now there's a very exciting new frontiers that only AppSec skill set, the people who can actually understand what the intent of the code can look at in a new interface like skills and MCPs and cursor rules and all the new beasts they need to have a very good intimacy with. And I think this is a very exciting time. We've seen a similar things happening when Docker and Kubernetes started. We started to see pop up in the DevOps team of DevSecOps roles that came into the CI. So I see more and more AI related roles and mindset inside the application security teams. That will be an exciting time for them.
So that's actually a very positive type of an outlook because some people are wailing and gnashing their teeth saying AI is taking away the jobs of our security professionals. But in reality, it's transforming our jobs. We're adapting to the new technology. And for those who understand it and take the effort to understand it are going to be the ones that are going to be most successful and most likely leading the teams in the future. And for those who want to look it up, we'll put it in the show notes. But the February 20th announcement, Making Frontier Cybersecurity Capabilities Available to Defenders from Anthropic.com, is what we're talking about in that particular item. So as we look at people using things like Claude Code and Claude Code security, the idea is, hey, we can go ahead and do that. What do you think the biggest risk is? Do we end up with a false sense of security, or are we able to go ahead and inspect this well enough that we say, yep, I'm very confident that this will work. And when it comes time to renew my AppSec tool contracts, I just got to let them expire because I can do everything with my Claude Code security. Is that a real future? Is that a possibility, or is that unlikely?
Yeah, so I do have a very strong opinion here on where the new risk is coming from. And this is not from me being a prophet, it's because we're talking to CISOs and customers daily, and the main concern is about the environments themselves. So think about this analogy. So it's no longer about how we secure what's going into the sausage, it's about securing the sausage factory, right? We believe that moving forward, securing what goes into the sausage will become commodity, will commoditize with time. And this new factory that just, growing so fast in front of us and no one can really grasp the impact of it is the most important thing. And I'll touch a little bit in a more concrete way. Think about a CISO that has like, I don't know, 5,000 developers in the company in a 20,000, 30,000 employees enterprise. If you ask that CISO today, hey, who's using Claude and Cursor and writing vibe coding, and how's that look like? The real answer, I don't know. I bought that many licenses. I can ask someone at engineering, but they have no understanding of the surface that they're open to. They're just the this new attack surface they just exposed to. And once we turn on the light and we show them, hey, you have this developers on that team using 3 or 4 different type of vibe coding, because I don't know if you know that, but every single developer today will not settle on Cursor, will not settle only on Claude. They're having like 5 different ways to write their code because it's so exciting. So they will use everything. And by the way, excitement is a good thing, but it can create confusion. It can create people who use their Gmail or private accounts in an enterprise context. They can work with MCPs. They're excited about their functionality without knowing it's malicious. And just turning on the light on a 3 steps journey, turn on the lights, put some guardrails so you can at least nudge the developer or even block them from doing stupid things, and then block in an inline fashion whatever is actually trying to attack you for example, data leaks or prompt poisoning that are coming to the agents. Make sure the agents are safe enough to be used becomes the number one problem at any organization we meet.
Interesting. So if we look, then you're almost, it sounds like you're talking about like a vibe coding dashboard where you can see what people are using out there and things like that. Now, that makes sense at a typical enterprise. Everybody's in the same room and I've got everybody on the own subnet. But what about in a remote world where people are working from all over the place? How do I really keep track of this and then provide for the CISO or the security leader the insight that they need to see what's actually happening?
Yeah, so that's a problem we actually solved as an industry. We did that for cloud security, whether it's Aqua, Orca, Wiz, whatever CSPM software you had a central dashboard to see all the different usage of cloud across the organizations. And think about that fashion with AI. However, you're going to need some protection on the endpoint itself. So it's not only finding the problem with this um, developer that is trying to do malicious stuff or accidentally use his private email. It's about blocking them and putting them back into the guardrail. And as long as they're using the enterprise policies, let them vibe, let them enjoy the power of this new technology and don't be the department of no.
Yeah, I remember seeing a cartoon where a guy's walking out the door. It's like, dude, where are you going? It's only 10 o'clock. He says, yeah, I'm out of tokens. I'll be back tomorrow. It's like, that's the new work ethic. It's like, yeah, when I run out of tokens, I just go home.
That's funny.
As we look at agentic AI and the ability for it to go ahead and interact with the real world, and probably through model context protocol, MCP, et cetera, being that kind of interface, how do we keep excessive permissions from changing in our developer environment? How do we make sure that it's well behaved and we don't inadvertently uh, get to the point where it could come up? And we've heard a couple cases say, "Yep, I'm sorry, I deleted your entire production database. My bad." But like, no, restore it. No, I deleted it. We've had these unguardrailed examples that we've seen a couple of these nightmare stories. How do we keep it on the straight and narrow?
Yeah, that's a great question. Think about it on a broader level. The Who was writing the code in your company 2 years ago? It was humans, right? Using their developers' IDEs and just writing code. Now these are unhuman artifacts, AI, of course, operated by humans, and just like humans, we created a very strict discipline on how we protect the organization from the activities that the human beings are doing. They have list privileges, they have permissions, they have identities, all these things now associated with the new creature, with the agents, with the AI, um, with the agentic approach, just like a first class citizen as a human. So you need to take care of its onboarding. You need to take care of him, offboarded nicely. There are so many agents running out there that did not complete their job and will still running, and you don't know what's their permission, what's their ability to execute and make harmful things in the organization. So I think that's a good analogy to think about it. As long as you treat them with all the capabilities that human being can do and treat them with the right life cycle, um, you will be able to control it. That's a hard problem. I will say one of the problems here as well is that the typical definition of a developer has changed. When you think about a developer, you think about the engineering team sitting in their room, having some cool stickers on their laptops, right? That's the engineering team. The rest of the company is not going to write code. That has changed dramatically because this excitement got everywhere. And we see today people in the marketing team using Claude Code, in the finance team get their own ideas on how to run an application for making their financial reports. And the CISO has absolutely no idea on what's going on. And these guys are not even used to working in a controlled, security oriented environment. So this is like a secondary impact, but still growing very fast in the organizations.
So now I can see why you looked at your business model for Backslash and said, "Hey, this is a big gaping hole in the way that we're moving forward with AI." I said CISOs have no visibility into what's out there. Sure, I can know what the IT team is doing because that's a well-worn path. We have spent a lot of time with our developers. We know what their environments are. We give them an IDE, we give them the tools, we give them some boundaries, and off we go. But if somebody in marketing is going ahead and they're cross-connecting with an unlicensed version of AI, and they're going to download all their internal data saying, "Go write a marketing strategy for me," and they've just coughed that up because they've given that away because the terms of service are basically, if you don't pay for the product, you are the product. And so what we can do then is to say, hey, to manage that risk, you need to be able to know who's using what and are they authorized or not authorized and the like. And isn't that what you guys are doing now at Backslash?
Yeah, in a way, this is exactly what Backslash is doing. I think um, the use cases are becoming so ridiculously obvious. You would think that a mature, I don't know, 20, 30 people in the security team would have an understanding of what's running, what's going on, but it's very hard. You can't blame anyone because we never seen anything like that in terms of pace spreading in organization. So the visibility, just show me what I have right now. It's a simple request with no answer right now, very limited answer. This is what we're trying to address with Backslash security, vibe coding security platform to show you what's happening, to help you put very straightforward guards and control the adoption. Maybe I'll say one more thing about this, observation. Been a while in the industry with so many technology trends. It's a very singular point in time, like rare. super rare where the CEO of the company is so excited about something that the developers are excited about, right? So the CEO gonna talk on the all hands how we must move into AI. We need to go faster. We need to innovate. That's the opportunity. Everything is changing. That's a business critical mission. Developers are on the same page. They're like, yeah, give me OpenClaw, give me work with Cursor. I'll take any version, anything. And now there's a middle layer in the organization, especially the security teams, terrified with how they're going to make this compromise between the speed and the responsibility of adopting it in a safe way. And I think this is the sweet spot where Backslash steps in and provide a comprehensive solution that this could be adopted safely, other than just being department of no and say, oh, we're not going to do MCPs, we're not going to do skills, it's too dangerous, and not in our school.
So do you provide just visibility to what's there, saying, "Hey, here's your MCP. Here's how this is we're using. Here are the different users using different AI tools," or are you actually able to intervene in there and things like make sure that there's secure prompt rules injected into these relationships so that individual people like marketing who have no clue what IT security is, that their prompts get translated or filtered in a way that they don't end up exposing the organization?
Right. So going a little bit deeper about what Backslash offers, um, this is again a three steps journey. The first step is turning on the lights. We'll show you this department are using these tools. Maybe some of them allowed, some of not. You're not even aware of. Maybe you didn't want to see. You didn't expect to see OpenClaw or what used to be called Clawbot all over the organization. You don't want to see it. Maybe you have a developer that just decided to use DeepSeek model, and you're not allowing a China-based models for whatever reason. And then it can be for this guy in the, again, marketing department that decided to use his Claude Code Gmail account because he couldn't log in with any other user. So all this deviation from a baseline, you would like to, a healthy baseline of usage of the tools would be the number one priority. Then we're vetting for the security of each one of the components. If you want to use an MCP, we'll make sure it's scanned and clean and doesn't have any network exposure or excessive privileges. Same for any skills you will install, we'll make sure it's clean. And last but not least, once everything is clean and you understand what's going on in the environment, we're monitoring each endpoint traffic to the outside world. So we have our own local proxy on every machine as if you're working with the actual MCP, but you're working with the backslash wrapper of the MCP that looking on all the traffic, and if a password leaks, if a prompt rejection come in, whether it's inbound or outbound, we will clean up the traffic and make sure you're not being attacked. And if you have any deviation, this will go to the SOC and SIEM team, SIEM system of the company.
Wow. Now, how well does that scale? I mean, am I limited to like a dozen developers, or can I put an enterprise level organization into this protection umbrella, so to speak?
Yeah, so I just give a couple of examples without mentioning name for sure. So we're working with a Fortune 50 financial credit card company, that type of scale, or it's in the thousands of developers and or workstations we need to protect. This is the challenge.
Yeah, it is. So what you've got then is the developers and things such as that. So if we've got something that scales like that, we've got some legacy on-prem stuff, we've got cloud native microservices and things like that. And then, of course, you got the AI developing here, here, here. Is there anything that tags those things? So if I look at a library, go to GitHub, and I got 100 different things in my repository. How do I know which ones are AI and which one are human developed? Do we stick a little red sticker on them and say, "Yep, that's AI, but this one isn't," or do we kind of know that based upon the tracking that you've been able to do, so you can actually help us sort through our inventory?
It's hard to tell. You may find evidence in some repositories they were created with AI because of their definition files, etc. But in general, we look at the very obvious thing that We know the footprint of Claude. We know the footprint of Cursor. We know the footprint of MCPs and skills and AI rules. They have a very definitive shape that we can identify, protect, and expect in that sense. So we're less concerned about which part of the code you should blame human beings and which part of the code you should blame AI. At the end of the day, code is code. And once it will go to production, you will definitely, for compliance reasons, have your typical traditional gates. We're more concerned about, again, the sausage factory, the making sure that the Claude code was not poisoned with a external component that was hooked into it.
Yeah, that's a very good insight. So as we're getting kind of close to the end of the show here, let's think about some of the takeaways that CISOs and security leaders can do. First of all, AI is here to stay. It is improving at a geometric pace in terms of its capabilities. We've moved from just simply asking questions to being an assistant to being agentic to now potentially writing all of our code and maybe even now reviewing our code so that we could say that we have this code writer, this code reviewer, but all of this stuff is taking place in the silicon. Will we ever get to the point where we have a high confidence level that this code is going to be secure and bug free? Or is that just like asking for humans to write secure and bug free code? It's an aspiration, but yeah, it's never a destination we'll reach.
I think that we will be able to get to a point where we will be confident enough without human interference with the outcome. It will take time. It's not tomorrow morning, but we will have um, agents that will review the code. We'll have the coding models being able to generate code which is safer, and it's getting better and better every day. It's not going to be 100%. There was always going to be the next attack surface, the next thing on the code that AI was not on top of, but definitely not where we were 5 years ago or 3 years ago, where every single line needs to be scanned, reviewed by human beings in a very, time consuming human processes of every little bug. By the way, I don't think we were that successful in the past as well. I mean, look at the backlogs of security issues in code in every organization. They're in the thousands, tens of thousands, and we're just having a risk um, system that helps us to make sure we at least reach out the top priority. We'll not get to every, and each and every one of them will never get there. So anyhow, the system was not super effective in the past.
So I think what you're providing as a resource is the ability to not fly blind anymore. As AI is infused into the organization, as you said, the CEO wants what the developer wants. Very rare that these things align. And now with the capabilities that you guys have created over at Backslash as a CISO, I can actually have a little bit more confidence that I got a handle on this thing. I can go ahead and report who's using AI. What I can tell you, what tools are they using? I can tell you who's trying to use things they shouldn't be using. I think I can tell you. And then, what part of our code base has come through this, and I can attribute to these approved processes. And that type of visibility is incredibly valuable for security leaders. And so I would like to say thank you for taking the initiative to go ahead and build that out for us. Any last thoughts you have before we wrap up?
No, I think that that was a fascinating conversation. Maybe one last word just about the visibility. You know, Claude, Cursor, Copilot, OpenClaw, they're all doing amazing job in a pivotal technology for our age. I think looking back on 2026 or 2025, my kids will look back into this year as a very pivotal year for the industry and what's happening and how code is being generated, etc. It's a beginning of inflection point. Um, and they're doing a good job themselves with bringing visibility to their own tools. Cursor would like you to control the cursor environments in the enterprise. Same for Claude, etc. But our very specific position at Backslash, sitting outside of the different um, feature set of each one of the vibe coding environment, we allow the enterprise to have a central visibility across the vibe coding that exists today or whatever will come up later on from a very unique position outside of the vibe coding environment. So, and we see that resonates really well with the current need, growing need for visibility.
Well, Shahar Man, thank you very much for taking the time to be on the show. I think for those of us who are in the audience, we found this to be very timely and very useful. So if you like our CISO Tradecraft podcast, don't forget to follow us if you're not doing that already. And give us a thumbs up or a 5-star, not because we're grade grubbing, they don't get paid for that, but it helps other people find our show and be able to help them out in their CISO Tradecraft journey. I'm your host, G. Mark Hardy. I'd like to thank you for being part of this. And until next time, stay safe out there.